to this edition of the Nice Job Podcast. How you doing out there? Doing good? It's 2021 rolling for you. I hope so. I hope it's all great. I hope it's, really trending in the right direction for you. And I'm really glad that you are here. As you know, this podcast, what it serves to do is to give you some great tips and insights and some thoughts and opinions that perhaps you can take into your own business and into your own world as well. In today's episode, we're going to dive into a little bit of elements of recruiting and hiring and that whole process. And I've mentioned a couple times that if you had someone that you wanted us to interview on the podcast, you could always just reach out to us. And that I, while trying to look for guests, was going to try to find interesting stories, interesting people, and just things that I thought would help you. And this was one in particular. And the backstory was I was going through Facebook. I landed in a Facebook group and I saw people talking about recruiting, talking about hiring and, processes and some things that just, that they wanted to get a better angle on. And I was referred to a video that my guest had recorded that talked about her process, how successful she was with it. But ultimately, it was part mindset and part strategy. And I really loved it. And I think that you, no matter what industry you are in, can benefit from our conversation today. So like I said, just take something from this conversation and try it out. If you want to like, you want to share, you want to comment, you want to get this conversation out to other people, we would appreciate that. But for now, just listen in and let's see if we can get you some great tips. My guest today is Stephanie Pipkin from Serene Clean. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me and coming on the Nice Job Podcast.
Absolutely, Sean. Happy to be here.
And as I mentioned, I was looking through some Facebook groups and I found an interesting video that you had recorded regarding your interviewing process. But before we get to that, I want to learn a little bit about you. How did you get into the business that you're doing? And tell us a little bit about your company.
Absolutely. So I own a company in Western Wisconsin. It is called Serene Clean. I opened in April of 2019 and it was just me. And now we are at 17 employees, 2 locations, 2 full-time office staff, excluding myself. And it just continues to grow exponentially. We do residential and commercial cleaning, a lot of move outs, Airbnbs, kind of a whole smorgasbord of cleaning. We get to see some crazy stuff, which is always fun. And I'm just excited for the future. I see just exponential growth continuing. And a lot of that has to do with what we're going to talk about today.
Did you always have the entrepreneurial background and the entrepreneurial spirit? Were you slinging stuff at 5 years old? What really attracted you to go into business for yourself?
I have always been quite the sales lady, that's for sure. My teachers will say that. But my background, I got an associate's degree in marketing. I waitressed all from 14 years old to about 21. And then I worked for my family's company, which is a manufacturing facility. And I was their office manager. And so I learned kind of the back end nitty gritty of how do you run a profitable business, the boring stuff that's super important. And then this was just supposed to be a side hustle to bring a little extra cash in. And here we are just under 2 years later. And it is pretty much transformed my entire life. So.
And you mentioned manufacturing, you mentioned, kind of being an office manager in that sense. So efficiency, I'm sure, is a big thing for you, not wasting a lot of time, not wasting a lot of resources unnecessarily, which leads us kind of into, recruiting sometimes is something that people think is going to take up their whole lives and take a ton of time. Before we get into how you conduct your interviews, when you looked at, all right, I got to start hiring for my companies, I got to start hiring for my staff, what were the top goals that you had in mind when putting a system in place?
Something that saved a lot of time and really went through candidates incredibly quickly because most people that apply are not going to be a quality candidate. So I don't want to waste any time on somebody who is not worth my time. And I find that most business owners laboriously look over resumes and hem and haw over things that really don't matter or move the needle. So I just don't want to waste my time or that of the applicants. So yeah, efficiency is definitely a big deal. And this whole process, once you get it going, oh my goodness, I literally hours and hours a week of not wasting time going the traditional route of interviewing that most people are used to.
And just to tease the audience a little bit further before we get into the nitty gritty part of it, it's also something that you have that you're kind of repeating over and over. So it's kind of helped you not end up in a situation where you're in a drastic need. You kind of fill a pipeline of candidates. And, when you have the ability to give up more hours, give up more jobs, there's a stock of people you can go to, and then we need to kind of fill in underneath. How much did it weight off your shoulders to know that is really something you don't have to worry yourself about?
And I think this is one of the reasons we're growing so quickly too, is I am not afraid to just go after sales and leads and really push for growth, because I know for a fact we are going to fill every position that I need to, and quality is not going to suffer either, because I'm going to have high quality candidates, and it really empowers me as the boss to get rid of the bad ones and just continually bring in the good ones. And pipeline is the right word for it. Really, I have a list in my head of people that I could hire right now if I need to fire, or somebody quits, or we're growing really fast. It's incredibly empowering, and gives you the power back as the owner.
And how quickly did you implement this system into your business? Was this something that you kind of discovered from other things and put it right away? Or was there that moment where you're like, you know what? I had one time where I couldn't find a candidate, done.
No, not at all. So I actually have a business coach, and this is what they taught me how to do. So shout out to Thrive Time in Oklahoma. They are my business coach, and they utilize this system and with all sorts of industries. So this is not specific at all to the cleaning industry. It really works universally. And so I implemented this probably about April of last year. Previous to that, I was doing traditional one-on-one interviews and just the traditional way of hiring, if you will. So for me, something I am is definitely an implementer. So I, even if I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, just try it. That's kind of my motto. And that's why they like me. My coaches like me because I just do what they say. And if it doesn't work, we can always readjust, but this works.
And even when, coaches or mentors are giving you some insight, you always have to kind of make it your own. You talk about it'll work across all industries, but, a lot of it is defining, what you are looking for in that instance, because you can have a bunch of people coming through the door, but if you don't have a clear idea of what you're looking for, and what you do to kind of dive right into it now is a bit unique is you do group interviews. So you talked about you were wasting time kind of doing one-on-one, and now you kind of do group interviews, interviewing everybody at once. Before we kind of go through step by step, there's probably some hesitation people out there that say like a group interview, it doesn't make sense. Do you want to bust some myths right off the top? A lot of people might say that in a group interview that, stars really don't get a chance to shine because it's in a group setting. How would you respond to that sort of myth?
I would say that people you really want on your team will take that as a challenge and go out of their way to shine in a group setting. So especially I really am looking for people who are very personable, who are outgoing. So they will take the bull by the horns, because I know for me, if I walked into a group interview unaware of this, because that's exactly what it is, they're walking in blind to this, I would look around the room and says, I'm going to get this job, not them. That's how I would take it. And I want people who have that kind of tenacity and a little bit of aggressiveness of saying like, okay, I need to outshine all of these people. However, just because somebody is quiet in it or doesn't talk a lot or anything like that, we absolutely do not discount them. Really, the whole point of this is to weed out the bad ones. This is just the top of the funnel, basically, to slowly weed them down. So many of my current cleaners are rock stars who are very quiet, and they were super quiet in the group interview. They were shy, but that doesn't mean I didn't hire them. Again, we're just looking for people who match, and we'll talk about this further, I'm sure, core values and what we're all about kind of thing. So yeah, it definitely, it allows people to shine for sure.
And the other great thing I love you do about your group interviews is you do them regularly, not just when you have a need. So let's start there. How did you start implementing the group interviews, or how do you go about, advertising and scheduling? Let's start at the top level there when it comes to setting up this type of system.
Sure. So we do group interviews every Tuesday at 4:30. That's just an arbitrary time that works for us. So every single week, I could literally not be hiring for months, and I'm still doing the group interview. This allows you to always have a very full pipeline of candidates. And no, the room is not full every week. So I would say half the time nobody shows up. So it just always gives me plenty of candidates to choose from, and it weeds out the ones who say they're going to show up and then they don't, and they're not wasting my time. So to set it up, we don't, and this is free, we don't do anything. We don't pay for any leads. There's no paying for like any recruitment sources or anything like that, which is awesome. So we are literally posting our job posting on both Indeed and Facebook. Those are our sources. And we do get walk-ins, of course, people who will call for a job, but our most popular is probably Indeed and then Facebook afterwards. So we post our job posting, and Indeed will pressure you, of course, to spend money with them. We don't do that at all. Again, just all free. And then every single week, what we do is we create a new job listing and pause the old one so that we're constantly being pushed to the top and it looks like a brand new job. And it's the same, everything's the same. It's just quick, create a new job, and there it is. And again, you're just trying to push yourself to the top of the listing so more eyes can see it and that it looks like a current job, which it is. Then from there, we have auto messages that we'll send out to all the candidates saying, hey, got your resume, super excited to meet you. I'm having interviews at this time. Will you be there? And then they'll say, yes, I will, or they'll say, no, I won't. And we tell them, come next week then at the same time. Very rarely do we make exceptions and meet somebody at a different time unless we're really, really interested in them. I am not looking at a single resume before I interview anybody, which I know is going to blow some people's minds. Again, time waster. Anybody can write anything on a resume. So that's a waste of your time until they show up and you kind of like them. Don't even look at a resume. That's my motto. And again, it's working great. So that's how we set it up. And then send out that message. They say, yes, we're coming. We track that to make sure that we're understanding who is saying they're coming and who's not. So that next week when they do show up, perhaps, and they said they were going to last week, you got to track that stuff. So yeah, that's how we set it up.
And the job descriptions or the job posting in its sense, I think some people might think for the group interview setting that you're just kind of like, hey, work available, come on in. But I took a look at one kind of through your video. It's detailed. You laid it all out there. So it's kind of like the light filter number one, just to start, is people are going to read a description and it'll kind of match. But I think you'll kind of get an idea the candidate really wants to come through when you set up for that interview and they're not delaying and they're not trying to get it on their schedule. Because if you're trying to schedule someone for, their job, you don't have to play on their rules. They're going to kind of play on yours. So,
exactly.
So I kind of love that. But if you could kind of talk into what your job description looks like, because I know some people do struggle with that just right off the top of, all right, well, how do I pitch for a job that I'm constantly searching for, but maybe not actively hiring? So how do I kind of cast a wide net while making sure that I'm still getting the candidates that I want to respond?
Sure. And I think when you look at a job posting, you are selling yourself and your company. So I never use phrases such as, a little bit at the end of the posting, if you look at it, you must do this, you must do that. etc. Like the candidate must have this kind of experience or whatever. That's obviously pertinent information to do some filtering, but that doesn't make me want to apply to that job. So you are trying to take all of the best things about your job and make it sound great, because it can be great for the right person. And again, we are cleaning technicians. We are cleaning toilets all day. How do I get that to sound snazzy and exciting? So really, I'm phrasing things like, do you enjoy a job that allows you a flexible work schedule and plenty of work-life balance, an active job where you get to make people's lives better every single day? Really, again, there's that marketing in me coming out, but like spinning things to make it sound as attractive as possible to catch the eye. So I would say that as for catching a wide net, we do want as many applicants as possible. So we don't try to narrow it down too much unless the job you're hiring for is a very specific thing, like a doctor or something like that. And this is a thing that works for even very specialized architects and things like that. So my business coach, their coaching company coaches all sorts of people, and they are literally using it for plastic surgeons. They are using it for architects, very specialized things that you wouldn't anticipate this would work for. But if somebody can't show up for an interview to be a plastic surgeon, you probably don't want them, just like a cleaning person. So yeah.
Yeah. Regular listeners of the podcast know that I think a lot of sports references, but there's an old line that I used to love that says, if you're good enough, someone will pick you up for practice. And it's one of those things, but it kind of works in that regard of, if they're a person that's going to kind of match your values and be a hard worker, they'll be dedicated to do what they need to do, respond to emails, schedule the interview, show up on time, dressed appropriate, things like that. They'll do that thing. So there's a lot that just when they walk in that door, that you probably have a good idea about them, how they dress, how they've responded, how they've written the email. But so say I'm a new candidate and I'm coming into this group interview. What am I seeing? How do you, do you set up the room a certain way? Do you follow a certain structure? How do you conduct these group interviews?
Absolutely. So the first thing you see is both of my office ladies in the front, and then I'm in my office in the back. We have a table in the front with a piece of paper that is where you put your name, your email, and your phone number. So as people are coming in, they are signing into the sheet, and depending on how early they are, we'll just tell everybody, have a seat in our little lobby seating area, and we'll get started at 4:30. That way I never want to repeat myself, so that we're doing this all at once. Again, time saving. My office staff are sitting at their desks working. Really what they're doing is noting everything about these people as they walk in. What time did they show up? What are they dressed like? As they walk in, what is the demeanor? What's the energy? What's the vibe? This is something they will continue throughout the interview as well, is taking very detailed notes about what people are doing, saying, and behaving like.
And do you shift the structure at all if you have, 5 via 20, or do you try to cap the amount on your group interview? Is there a point where it's too much?
The most I've ever had to show up is 8. So, or no, 10, I think. So, most people are going to freak out and say, oh my gosh, I got 50 applicants. 50 people are not going to show up. You're going to get maybe 15, probably more in the 8 to 10 range. So, I would say in some weeks I literally have one person, and then it's a very short interview then for the most part. And I might bring in more traditional questions and things like that if it's just one-on-one. But if it's 2 or more, then always the same format for everything.
And so about that, you talked about the specific questions on a one-on-one versus a group interview. Is there a structure to your questions? Are they more, core value based? Are they more, skill based? What kind of strategy do you implement when you're interviewing a group?
Mm-hmm. So really, the questions I'm asking are typically almost to catch them in things. So, and that sounds bad, but just you're trying to give them plenty of opportunity to mess up and get out of the funnel, basically. So we're just trying to catch them saying things or reacting to things and in behaviors that don't match our core values. So really the structure is I open up, I introduce myself, I give a little 2-minute summary of the business, where we started, where we are now. And then I go into our core values and I talk about what those are. I give specific examples of what those are. And then I pretty much get a little bit aspirational and talk about our company and where I see it going, as well as our current team. And I literally, people after the fact tell me they like how straightforward I am in the group interviews. I talk about, my team, my current team is amazing. And to be part of this team, you too have to be amazing. And I don't let just anybody into this team, because that will hurt all of us. And then I talk about things like what makes somebody successful here and what makes the people who don't work out, this is why: attendance, attitude, attention to detail, stuff like that. And then after that, I open it up to questions. And this is a vital part, because when I'm sending that message to set them up for the interview process, that auto message, we give them 3 instructions: be on time, bring a notebook, and bring a list of questions you have about the position. So if they don't do those things, that's telling me that they are not good listeners or attentive. So if they come with no questions, that automatically disqualifies them from the position, because that means they didn't give 2 seconds thought to this whole thing. So I don't care to have them. They're not going to put effort into things. So I open it up to questions, and then we answer questions, and that's pretty much it.
In that sort of setting, I think that if a lot of people are engaged and it's kind of going back and forth, there's maybe the tendency for it to run a bit longer. Do you try to keep it to a certain length, or if the conversation's good and it's back and forth, everyone's engaged. Well, that means you probably have a lot of good candidates. So you're going to limit stretch, because ultimately you talk about setting this up to save you some time. And I think people might think like, all right, well, if I have 8 people and they're all kind of chatty, like, I don't know if I could block out 2 hours for this. Do you kind of
It's never gone that long. It's usually half an hour to 45 minutes at the most. And that's because people, if they are feeding off each other, that's excellent. I don't set a time limit to this. I just let it naturally go out. And that's another thing that's really great in a group setting, is that people will kind of feed off each other and like, oh, that's a good question, let me bring this up. And we talk about that. But yeah, it usually doesn't go too long. And because we're not asking any individual, like, tell me about your greatest strengths kind of thing, or what's your biggest weakness. I mean, those are all things that people are practicing. They're going to say whatever they think you want to say. And that's why I don't waste my time with that type of stuff.
Now, the other potential, problem that people might already put in the way, even before they even try this, they're going to think, they're like, all right, well, I'm constantly interviewing and I don't have work. How do I keep engaged with candidates I like, but I can't give full time to, or I can't give hours to? Do you have any strategies or tips or something that you've done where, hey, there's this candidate I really like, I don't want them to fall out of my pipeline, but I can't bump another rock star at the moment. What do you do to stay engaged with that person to hopefully, keep them ready to go?
So this literally just happened. In the group interview about 4 weeks ago, I believe, there's a lady we were very interested in. We didn't have the work for. So what I say generically, if I am hiring right now, this second, I will say that we are making a hiring decision right now, or in the next week we are hiring. Otherwise, I just say, well, we are looking for candidates in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So we will keep you posted if we want to meet with you again, and blah, blah, blah. So with this particular lady, very interested, didn't have the work for her. What we did was just kind of keep her in the loop of when we anticipated work to occur. So we were about 4 weeks out. So we sent her a message saying, hey, we really liked you. This is the current status of the jobs available right now. We just wanted to let you know. And sometimes rock stars will slip away from you because you simply don't have the work. But typically, for me, I find it very motivating to have somebody that I really want to hire. I don't have the work for. It pushes me to make more sales and take on more. But if that's not the case for you, then I would say just keep them in the loop of timeline if you know it. Otherwise, you never know what somebody's current situation is going to happen. So literally, I could be hiring, today, and I might not have anybody I was interested in, like from the past month, but I could go back 3 months, because we take, keep your records straight. Wow, I really like that person. Let me reach out to them. And it's happened so many times where they are not happy, or they are going through a life change too. And so, don't feel pressured to hire somebody if you just don't have the role. I would say that that's a bad place to be, because then you're going to be way overstaffed, and feel very stressed about that, because I know that certainly stresses me out. So I would say, yeah, just keep them in the loop. But if you don't have a position, don't feel pressured. They're going to be there, or they're not going to be there, and just be very, calm about it.
And have you seen any effects within your company or within your staff? Because obviously they would have come through this process, and they know that you're always sort of looking. Has that kind of raised the game for everybody? Or has it put any sort of pressure? Like, what type of effect does this have when you now are working for a company that knows, like, hey, like, we're actively looking for rock stars. So, make sure you keep that rock star status yourself.
It absolutely changed the whole environment and atmosphere of just pursuing excellence and everything we do. And it puts pressure in all of the best ways for them. But they also like it too, because when somebody does slip through the cracks, because this still, of course, happens, that is not good. They need to go. It makes them feel very happy, because one thing I will say is, I am a I don't know if a kick butt boss. I'm a kick butt boss, and my employees know that I have their back as long as they have mine. And what that looks like is not letting people who are bad into the team and not keeping them around if they do make it in. So they love that I'm constantly interviewing, because they know that if somebody bad shows up, I'm going to get rid of them really quickly, because nothing, I would say, disempowers and makes employees disillusioned more so than management ignoring blatant problems. And if you are not taking care of that and being the boss that you need to be, it's going to create a lot of bitterness in your workforce. And that's not something we ever want. So overall, it is great for company morale. And if somebody is upset about it, that should be a red flag to you.
Yeah. And it goes back to that old adage that the number one way to lose A players is to surround them with C players.
Yes.
Don't give them the resources that they need. As you get through your group interview, you have everybody kind of get this pipeline, you're kind of hiring. Is there anything else that you're actively doing with, the new onboarding or anything like that? Like, does this process continue throughout? So for example, like through the group interview, do you do group trainings, or from that point, does it become individualized and you making sure that there's special attention at that part?
Yeah, it definitely becomes much more individualized after the group interview process, because we are just trying to weed people out. If I am then interested in somebody, that's when we're going to meet one-on-one. And I'm not really asking any traditional interview questions. It's really just for me to get to know them as a person, because obviously, depending on what type of role you're hiring for, that is when you are going to, that second interview is really when you're going to want to ask those more technical specific questions, if that's necessary for you. Really, for our roles, I mean, we can train most anybody to clean, so it's more of a personality based thing for us. So that is what we're doing in that secondary interview, is just getting a feel for them, seeing what they're all about, and just trying to get to know them better. After that, say we do offer somebody a position, then we are going to be doing individualized training. We will do some job shadowing as well to see. So if I'm really interested in somebody during that second interview where I'm individual with them, we'll run out to a job site, perhaps a commercial location. We will do a quick rundown of what the cleaning would look like, or do it right in our office too, because if they get all icky about cleaning a toilet, probably not a good job for them. So we're, again, just vetting a little bit before we do that. So shadowing is definitely good, and they're not your employee yet, so you don't got to pay them for it. It's just part of the interview process. So and then after that, when they are hired, then always individual training with a lead trainer.
I love that process. I find it unique, but it's based in some true sort of entity that you always want to be recruiting, that good candidates find ways to sell themselves and are dedicated to that. But then ultimately, if you know what you have, the mindset going into the process, then you're not wasting time. One-on-one interview, you're going to set out across 15, 20 minutes, maybe, to have a conversation, and you can know 5 minutes in, it's not going to work. Yeah. You can know 2 minutes in, it's not going to work. You can know the second they show up,
second they walk in, I typically can tell, like literally the second I see them sometimes. And I immediately think, oh, thank goodness I didn't waste an hour on that person. Now I got other people to focus on. So that it's huge.
Yeah, and that's why, because once you filter through and you're talking to quality candidates, then you're spending quality time with quality candidates, and that should be the goal of recruiting. Here in season 2 of the Nice Job Podcast, I've been finalizing every interview with the same question, because we bring on our guests as experts in whatever topic they are talking about. But I know that anyone out there that is doing innovative and good things is always kind of thinking about something coming up next. So the question is, Stephanie, what do you not know now, either within your business, within recruiting? You can really take the question wherever you want. What do you not know now that you're A, actively working on, or B, you're most excited to find the answer to?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say for me, streamlining the training process so that people know what they're supposed to do, but I am not wasting time, as I'm trying to focus on always being as efficient as possible in training, but also going as in depth as possible. So finding what that looks like in a perfect world, whether because I personally like very hands-on training for the work we're doing, but that can get very tedious of having to have somebody in the field. But if I try to push that too fast, that person is not adept enough at the position. So I would say just getting the training down now after we hire somebody, that's really what I'm focusing on.
There you go, system on system. That's how you build a business that starts growing pretty exponentially. Well, good luck with that one, and thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with our audience here. If anyone is looking to maybe reach out, ask a question, anything like that, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you, or where would you like them to direct you?
Yeah, definitely. Just send me an email, Stephanie, STEPHANIE @serene-clean.com, and I will get back to you. You can also, if you can find me on Facebook, then you can just private message me there as well.
Nice. Well, we'll touch base after the interview here, and we'll make sure that we have the contact information or whatever you want to share in our episode description and below as well. But Stephanie, thanks again. I really appreciate the time.
You betcha.
And remember, as always, if you have any comments or episode suggestions, just drop us an email at podcast@nicejob.co. I'm your host, Sean Hill, and from all of us here at the Nice Job Podcast, we hope you be healthy, be safe, and don't forget to have a little fun out there as well.